He, honestly speaking, is not at the same peak he was a couple of years ago, even though he is still one of the best fighters. But I think it will be a very competitive fight, but I hope Movsar will do his job.
Volkanovski steps back into enemy territory. Abu Dhabi, UFC 333, a cage he's walked into as champion twice before, and twice before, chaos found him. This time, the man across from him doesn't carry a household name. He carries something more dangerous, a bloodline of belief. Because the man who broke Volkanovski's night in the most brutal way a fight can end isn't in the building, but his voice is everywhere. Islam Makhachev doesn't need to say much anymore. He's the reigning welterweight king, the sport's #1, pound for pound, and when he speaks about a former rival, people listen like it's gospel. And what he said cuts deep. He said Volkanovski isn't the fighter he used to be. Not washed, not finished, but diminished, a shadow of the man who ran the featherweight division for years like it was his personal kingdom. Rewind the tape, and you understand why those words land the way they do. February 2023, a 5-round war that pushed Volkanovski up a weight class against the most dominant lightweight on the planet. He lost the decision, barely, and walked out with his legacy somehow enhanced. He'd proven he belonged with anyone, at any weight. Then came the rematch, 8 months later, thrown together on short notice as an emergency replacement, the kind of fight only a champion with something to prove agrees to take. It ended in seconds. A head kick, clean and violent, and Volkanovski's night was over before it began. The kind of knockout that doesn't just end a fight. It plants a question in people's minds that never fully goes away. 3 years removed from that night, the question is louder than ever. Is Alexander Volkanovski still the fighter who ran through Max Holloway 3 times? Still the ferocious, relentless machine who never lost a featherweight title fight until the day age and mileage started whispering in his ear? Or is he now a legend defending scraps of what he built, running on reputation more than reflexes? Enter the man they're calling the future of the division. Movsar, young, hungry, and backed by the most powerful endorsement in the sport right now. Makhachev isn't just predicting a win for a countryman. He's handing him a blueprint, wrapped in the kind of quiet confidence that only comes from having already beaten the man on the other side of the cage. Twice. He knows himself that the fight won't be easy, Makhachev said, acknowledging the danger, respecting the champion, and then pulling the rug out from under him in the very next breath. Volkanovski is a tough opponent for anyone, but I think Movsar will manage with his youth. Youth. The one thing a champion can never train for, can never fix in the gym, can never out-strategize. Time takes something from every fighter eventually, and Makhachev is telling the world he believes that clock has already started running out on Volkanovski. Then the line that will follow Volkanovski into Fight Week, replayed on every broadcast, dissected on every podcast, thrown in his face by every reporter he sits across from before he steps into that Abu Dhabi cage. Volkanovski, honestly speaking, is not at the same peak he was a couple of years ago. Not disrespect, Makhachev insists. Just honesty. But honesty from the man who ended his night with a single kick hits differently than honesty from anyone else in the sport. And yet, buried inside that same quote is something that should terrify Movsar more than it comforts him. Even though he is still one of the best fighters. Makhachev isn't calling Volkanovski finished. He's calling him diminished, and diminished versions of legendary champions have humbled young hopefuls more times than anyone wants to admit. A wounded lion is still a lion, a champion with something to prove, walking into a fight where the entire world has already started writing his obituary, has historically been the most dangerous version of that champion there is. This is where the story gets its edge, because Volkanovski has heard this narrative before. He heard it after the first Makhachev fight, when people said he had no business being that competitive against a bigger, younger, faster champion. He heard it after the knockout, when people said his run was over, that the wear of 100 professional rounds had finally caught up to him. Every single time, he answered with performance. Not words. Fights. Makhachev calls it a competitive fight. Says he hopes his countryman does his job. But hope is a strange word to use about a fight you've already framed as a passing of the torch. It's the language of someone who believes deeply in an outcome but knows, deep down, that Volkanovski has made a career out of proving people wrong when they count him out too early. Because here's what the doubters keep forgetting. Every great champion eventually faces the fight where the world decides they're finished before the bell even rings. Some prove the doubters right and fade quietly into retirement talk. Others turn that noise into fuel, walk into the cage carrying every dismissive quote like ammunition, and remind everyone exactly why they were the standard the division measured itself against in the first place. Abu Dhabi is about to find out which version of Alexander Volkanovski shows up. The one Makhachev sees in his mind, slower, more hittable, a step behind where he used to be, or the one that has haunted this division for years. A 5-round nightmare who refuses to accept that his time is up, no matter how loudly the world insists it is. 2 months out, and the story is already writing itself in 2 completely different directions. One ending has Movsar validating everything Makhachev believes, announcing himself as the new face of featherweight on the sport's biggest stage. The other has Volkanovski silencing his most dangerous doubter yet, not through words, but through the only currency that has ever mattered inside that cage. A performance that reminds everyone exactly why he wore that belt in the first place. Whichever way it breaks, one thing is certain. When the champion and the challenger finally stand across from each other under the lights in Abu Dhabi, this fight won't just decide who holds the featherweight title. It will decide whether Islam Makhachev's words were prophecy, or just one more thing Alexander Volkanovski gets to prove wrong.